Hi there, my name is Matti Sulanto. I'm a photographer based in Helsinki, Finland. In this video, I'm going to tell you how to set up the exposure preview on Lumix Micro Four Thirds cameras. If you are new here and you like my content, please consider subscribing to my channel and also tap the bell so you won't miss any of my future videos. I will publish a new video every Tuesday and every Friday. The constant preview or the real-time exposure info is one of the best bits of electronic viewfinder. You can see the brightness of the image all the time, and when you change the exposure values, you can see how it affects the image and how the image would look if you pressed the shutter at that particular moment. Panasonic has a slightly different approach here compared to other manufacturers, and sometimes that can be confusing, especially if you are coming from another camera brand or you are just borrowing a Lumix camera. Let me explain how it works and how to set it up. On program, aperture priority and shutter priority, the exposure preview works like on any other camera. You can see the brightness of the image changing if you turn the exposure compensation dial. The viewfinder image or the image on the rear screen will go brighter or darker depending on which way you turn the dial. And you will see how the final image would come out if you pressed the shutter. If you want to preview the depth of field, you can press the preview button once. If you also want to preview the shutter speed effect, you press the same button twice. The third press will return to the normal view, so it's like a 3-press loop. The shutter speed effect preview is, to my knowledge, unique to Lumix cameras. The preview button on G9 and GH5, for example, is by default the button on the right side of the lens mount. Check your Lumix camera where the button is by default, and you can of course remap it to another button if you so wish to do. On manual mode, however, you need to turn on the constant preview if you want to see the real-time exposure all the time in the viewfinder and on the rear screen. You could, of course, use the preview button to view the real-time exposure info also on manual mode. However, in real-life shooting, you'll be pressing that button constantly, repeatedly, and sometimes you forget to press that and then you probably mess your exposure. So I think it's better to turn on the constant preview. When you have the constant preview on, you will see the depth of field and the shutter speed effect all the time in the viewfinder and on the rear screen. And the preview button does nothing. On manual mode, that is. And that's all good until you select a slow shutter speed, something like 1/15 of a second or slower. Because the shutter speed effect being visible, the viewfinder image and the rear screen image will become a blur as soon as you move the camera. It's almost impossible to frame or compose an image like that, because you can't clearly see what's going on. But I have a good and easy to use solution that works really well for me. I reprogrammed one of the buttons on the camera to toggle the constant preview on and off. On the G9, for example, I'm using the upper button on the right side of the lens mount. Now, if I'm on manual mode and using a slow shutter speed, I will just press that button to turn off the constant preview while I'm composing my image or reframing. When I'm happy with my framing and composition, I will push that button again to get back the constant preview, and then I will see the real-time exposure again in the viewfinder and on the rear screen. I find this very logical behavior. I'll keep the constant preview on all the time, and I will see the real-time exposure in the viewfinder and on the rear screen all the time on all exposure modes. If I want to see the depth of field preview or the shutter speed effect preview on program, aperture priority or shutter priority modes, I'll just press the preview button. The only time I need to turn off the constant preview is when I'm on manual mode and using a slow shutter speed. But that happens often enough that I want to have a button for it. I could do it in the menu, but that's too cumbersome. This works really well for me, and I hope this will work for you too, or at least it explains how the exposure preview works on Lumix cameras. Thanks for watching again, and I'll see you next time.